Hello, this is Sandra Miller from Biohacking Wellness, and thank you for joining me today. I have a very special guest with me today, and her name is Sue Ingebretson. Sue is an author, a speaker, a certified holistic health care practitioner, and the director of program development for the Fibromyalgia Chronic Pain Center at California State University, Fullerton. She is also fibromyalgia editor for ProHealth.com, as well as a patient advocate and the fibromyalgia expert for the Alliance Health Community of Health Conditions website. Sue can also lay claim to a #1 Amazon chronic illness best-selling book, Fibrowhyalgia, which details her own journey from illness to wellness. Sue has also been featured in First for Women magazine, on the nationally syndicated TV program Know the Cause, and KABC Radio, as well as other blog talk radio programs. And her writing has appeared in various print and online publications in the U.S. and worldwide. Sue is an active health coach and an emotional freedom technique, or EFT, practitioner as well. If you are someone that you know suffers from a set of symptoms to which you've not yet been given a diagnosis, I encourage you to stick around and listen to this part 1 of my interview with Sue Ingebretson. Everybody, and this is Sandra from Biohacking Wellness. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Sue Ingebretson, and Sue is the author of the book Fibrowhyalgia: Why Rebuilding the 10 Root Causes of Chronic Illness Restores Chronic Wellness. And Sue has come back from fibromyalgia herself, and she's here today to share a lot of the tips and tools from her book. We're going to talk a lot about fibromyalgia's root causes, and if you suspect that you have it, what you can do. If you already have experiencing symptoms, what you can do for that, and we're going to share a lot of good information today. So Sue, welcome. Thank you for stopping by today.
Oh, sure. I'm happy to be here. It's my favorite topic.
I know, I'm sure. Well, you know, one of the reasons why I think I connected with you and related to you was because I have the same issue. I had the same issue. I have a similar story. And, you know, I was told that I had fibromyalgia, but nobody could tell me what to do to fix it. And out of frustration, I just went and learned all I could about it. But unfortunately, we don't hear the real, I think, true therapies that can help us. We're given drugs. I know for myself, I was given antidepressants and, you know, oh, you're depressed. Oh, you're constipated, take a laxative. Oh, you're having brain fog. You know, I was given all kinds of information that really wasn't the best. So I think that knowing the 10 root causes that you describe in your book, or if you could touch upon those a little bit, is going to be very valuable, because I don't think people really understand why we get an autoimmune disease. So would you kind of go into that a little bit?
Sure. And I'd first like to say that there's a huge controversy out there about whether fibromyalgia is an autoimmune disease or not. And the short answer to that is I don't care. The bigger answer is technically no, it's not. But to me, what they say is if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. I don't care if it's a duck or not. I care that it walks and it quacks. I care how it acts with the things that you do, and it acts just like an autoimmune disease. It is just as reactive to your environment and foods and emotions and everything, just like an autoimmune disease, and it acts the same way, and it is repaired and improved by the very same things as an autoimmune disease. So that's what I care about.
That's fabulous.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And as far as the root causes, the way I had outlined them then, it's not that they're all separate. As you know, so many of them link, and it's a cascade of things. And if I had to technically put them in a different order, one might be an umbrella with 5 under it, and one might be, so it's not like they're all separate. Some are parts of others. But we do have to mention that there is a genetic predisposition, but genetics is not the answer. Genetics is not it's the smoking gun, theory. We know that it's not just that alone, because genetics only means that you may have a tendency. It's what you do with your life. It's what you do with your choices. That has 10 times the effect of what your genetics. But I have to mention it.
Yeah.
And then we get into traumas, physical traumas, emotional traumas. They are both equally as impactful in the body. Malnourishment, toxins. Toxins are internal and external, what you're exposed to, what you consume. Inflammation, as we know, as a result of these things. Infections, and there can be latent infections. We could have infections from childhood, and there can be, I still think that there are latent infections that have not been figured out yet, how they are in the body. And there are some people out there who believe that Epstein-Barr, for example, is completely connected to fibromyalgia, and those kind of things don't surprise me. I think there's a bigger picture than that, but those components are important. And then, of course, there's hormonal imbalance and thyroid dysfunction. That these are all part of what makes the bigger picture of throwing the body out of balance. And I call it systems gone berserk syndrome. Fibromyalgia doesn't really define it.
Irritable everything.
Yes.
I remember they called it. And, back in, I think it was probably the early 90s was when I was diagnosed. And, they do this tender point exam. And I think it's important for people to know that not everybody will display every symptom. I know that TMJ and headaches were a big one for some folks that I knew. I never had that. So just because you do or don't have a symptom does not necessarily mean that you don't have this. Would that be a correct statement?
Absolutely. And for me, I had specific joint pain in my hips and my knees and my wrists. And other people were like, I don't have that. I only have it in my neck. And of course, we're all different. So it could be joint pain. It could be the full, larger muscle group pain. It could be migraines. I'm grateful that is not something
Me too.
that
I'm
is
not
an
anything.
Yes.
I would not be here right now if that was the case. Those are tough to deal with.
Right. So it could be all the, various things. But what that shows us is that this is a systemic problem. And that's what most general practitioners are missing. It is a systemic problem. So that's a positive thing to me, because that shows you where you need to go to target your repairs. But because it's a systemic problem, there are 11 systems of the body or whatever, and so it might affect one system for one person more than another. It might be circulation, it might be respiratory, it might be digestive. Digestive is pretty common to them all, but we are each different, so it might impact one system more than another for one person more than another. That's why it's very individual, and that's why treatments also need to be very, very individual.
I mean, so many people say, I think I have this, but I don't have all the symptoms. So I think it's nice to know that not everybody's going to fit into a nice little round hole of symptoms like something like diabetes would. I mean, typically we know the symptoms of that. This is not like that. It's much different, and it can be much more complicated depending on the person's history. And like you had mentioned, we say in functional medicine, genes load the gun, but they don't pull the trigger.
Absolutely.
So what I'd like to do is let's talk a little bit about what pulls that trigger. Maybe we can take some of these things like toxins and emotions and break them down into what can go wrong here and how we can fix that. So one of the first things you mentioned, you did mention toxins, but you also mentioned traumas. I'd like to save that for the end because I would like to do a little talk about some stress management techniques. So if we can put that one aside for a moment and go on to toxins. This would include the food we eat, the air we breathe, what we're touching, all of that stuff. So share a little bit about how toxins actually can pull that trigger.
Absolutely. It was a real challenge for me to put the pieces together for myself. And I always said, oh, I had the perfect childhood, and oh, everything was fine for me, and I don't know why this person had this issue, but no, mine was great. And when I look back on it, I grew up in the Midwest, and the whole environment was toxic. So the groundwater was toxic, and all the herbicides and pesticides were in the groundwater. We had the crop sprayers that came, and our town was so small, they didn't even lift up over the town. They just sprayed right over. And, you know, DDT and all the farmland and all of those crops, you know, so those were, you know, an issue, but also the animals and what they're fed and all the antibiotics and stuff. And it was all in the well water, and we drank that all. You couldn't even see through the water. It was orange. So all of that was a constant assault to the body. And I think that some people can process that better than others, but when it's all at once, I had I always say I was nutritionally illiterate. So I was not raised with any kind of understanding of nutrition at all. We did not eat well. We ate crackers and chips and hot cocoa. You know, there really was no vegetables at all, and rarely had anything of any kind of substance. So very, very poor diet. And then the mercury in my teeth all at once, you know, about age 11 was when I got my first fillings, and they filled, this dentist believed in preventive dentistry. So he would just drill out a bunch of teeth in a row and fill them all with mercury because he thought he was doing you a favor.
Sorry, let me pick my jaw up from the floor. That is quite frightening because,
Yes.
Wow.
So my sister's even worse. She had these big troughs drilled all the way, both top and bottom. So there was this mercury onslaught. At 11, there was, you know, hormonal shifts going on, complete nutritional deficiencies, and then the onslaught of when we had moved to this super rural area and all of the toxins. Then later, I was in a significant school bus accident. And these things all combine, so it's not one thing. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. So we hear all the time, clients will say, you know what, I had a tubal ligation, I had a simple surgery, or I had my tonsils out, you know, something simple, but I never recovered. I never, you know, so they'll say that one thing did me in. And while that may have been the tipping point, there were other things before that the body was saying, I can't go, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And then one thing was the tipping point, and that is when you flip into the whole fibromyalgia and or autoimmune side.
The cup runneth over.
Yes.
And I think for me, and I don't know if this was something that you experienced as well, but I was in the medical field for a while. I was an EMT, and I moved from trauma stuff outside because that was very hard for me to deal with. So I thought, let me take my medical skills indoors, and I started working with OBGYN and, you know, general surgical stuff. In order to work in the clinic, it was required of me, against my better judgment, to have a hepatitis B series of injections. And for me, that was my tipping point. I got sick probably within a month after that for decades afterwards. Did you also have that excessive vaccination experience? And how do you feel that might have contributed?
Absolutely. And mine is even documented, not me personally, but what I had happen to me is actually documented in scientific studies related to MS and Guillain-Barré. I don't think I'm saying that right.
You did a good job.
But other autoimmune things. And what happened in the 70s in Iowa is the swine flu came through. Now, we heard about it a couple of years ago nationwide, but this is a long time ago. In the 70s, the swine flu went through the Midwest, Iowa and Illinois, I think. And so preventively, they came into the high school, and I'm sure all schools, and we all got vaccinated for the swine flu. Then I was part of a health career group where we went talking to other schools and, you know, I don't even remember what we did. But to be part of that health careers group, we had to get vaccinated. And I said, I was already vaccinated. And they said, oh, it doesn't matter. It's harmless. I got it again. Then I was part of a choir where we sang at nursing homes. We weren't allowed in the nursing home unless we were injected right there at the nursing home before we went in the door. I had it 3 times, probably in about 6 months. And I actually had neurological symptoms. I lost coordination, I lost vision, I was shaky, and I was 17 years old. So for me, all the nutritional stuff, the teeth at about 11, then all the other things in the toxic environment, then the school bus thing at 14, 15 years old, and then 16 really, I think, is when most of those vaccinations happened. So that was the tipping point. The vaccinations for me were definitely the tipping point. And I have read studies about that very specific strain of the swine flu and connected to MS and other autoimmune stuff. So it was just absolutely toxic. Absolutely toxic.
And you were young. You were very young. You had some more exposures yet to come.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, that's just at a very young age. So that's kind of a frightening thought that we're bombarded with that much stuff before.
Yes.
What did you say? 11?
Yes. And so I think from 11 to 16 was just like an onslaught. And to think that's when you're supposed to be the healthiest and, you know, most vibrant. So, I mean, I guess if I have to have it, good thing it was then and not at 60. But it was a very, you know, condensed impact of toxic exposures. So those are both internal and external. You know, I thought that the height of nutrition was Velveeta cheese. What did I know? So I'm toxic on the inside and I was toxic on the outside.
I actually did a short video back a while ago. It might have been about last year. And I talked about, it was called BPA, the hormone hijacker. And I always make a joke and I say to people, if you really want to lose fat and change your diet, go on a BPA-free diet. And a lot of people don't realize that just the plastic water bottles they're drinking out of every day, or if they're heating their lean cuisine meals,
right.
Hopefully you're not eating those, but if you are and you're heating them in plastic, that is a toxic exposure. So I think women get over 150 before they leave the house in the morning. So it's easy to see why people would have not just the whole collection of symptoms, but why the fatigue or the muscle ache or the brain fog, and they chalk it up to age, and it's really not necessarily that. Now, in your book, Sue, you also talk about heritage and personality, those two things. So let's kind of get into that a little bit and, you know, say a little bit about how heritage and personality also affect what happens outwardly and systemically.
I love that topic, obviously. I wouldn't have written about it. I am so grateful for my heritage. I am so grateful for my sense of humor. I'm so grateful for the tenacity that these strong Norwegians came across the ocean. You know, there's an old joke, Norwegian joke about how they, you know, suffered in this land of frozen tundra of Norway and Sweden, and so they got in these big Viking ships and they came across the ocean and they settled in Iowa and Minnesota in a land that's just as miserable as where they came from.
Yeah, welcome, right?
Woo! Big change.
I know.
But I make fun of myself because those tenacious tendencies helped me, but of course they also created the scenario of how I got sick.